Scripture for the day is this, Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans for welfare and not for evil, to give you a future and a hope. So when I read that scripture, I know at the end of the day that regardless of what anybody tells me in life, matter of fact, I'm going to move this out the way. I like to walk around. So regardless of anything that happens in my life, I know that Jesus Christ has the best plan for me at the end of the day, regardless of what anybody or regardless of what I see on social media, regardless of what I see on TV. I know that Jesus Christ has the best plan for me in his life. So I like to read. I'm a little bit of a nerd. And so what I always do is whenever I speak and I try to learn something, I go to the dictionary. So the definition of purpose in the dictionary is the reason for which something exists or is done, made, or used. And so when I heard that, it kind of related hand in hand with what I'm going to talk about tonight. So what I wanted to do first is I kind of wanted to give you an example of purpose in my life and how I've seen God work in my life. So this is me in high school. Now, a lot of people know I played football, but a lot of people don't know that I didn't start playing football until I was a junior in high school. And so, so this is me right here, 55. But a funny thing is, the starting running back for the Seahawks, this is him right here. This is one of my close buddies. His name is Chris Carson. And so we talk from time to time. So it's kind of cool. But I didn't start playing until I was a junior in high school. Again, it was something I started late. I grew up wanting to play basketball and baseball. But the problem is, when you're almost 300 pounds in high school, playing basketball kind of gets tiring, and playing baseball gets tiring too. So football was a sport for me. And so I didn't play much as a junior, but then I started and played every game on varsity. And then I had the chance to go to college, where I went to Shorter University. I played there 4 years. I played in every single game in my entire career, except I missed 3 games because I snapped my elbow in half. But other than, it was actually pretty bad. But other than that, I played in every single game. And so I was there from 2013 to 2017. And so during this time in my life, I had heard so many stories about, because you see them all the time. Think about The Blind Side. You hear, didn't start playing until he was a junior in high school. Where did The Blind Side end up going? To the NFL. Then you hear another story. This guy didn't start playing until he was a senior in high school. He ends up in the NFL. So at this point, I was like, you know what? I didn't start playing until I was a junior in high school. So where did I think I was going to end up? There you go. Okay, so as I go along through my career, I had a decent career. And so this next picture was an all-star game I played in. And so this was called the FCS Bowl, and what that was is it was an opportunity to play in front of NFL and CFL scouts. And so Shorter was a Division II school, and so I was one of 2 players there from Division II schools playing with Division I players. So at this point, I'm like, okay, I've made it through this level, I've made it through this level, I've made it through this level, so I'm like, now it's a sure thing. And so, I got to talk to a lot of scouts, I got to meet a lot of cool people at this, and it was a great experience. So then after that, what happens? What's the number one thing we look at on our phones day in and day out? Social media, right? And so what happens is that even on the professional level, people start talking about you on social media day in and day out. So this next slide is stuff I was getting to my phone day in and day out. So it says, one of the best tapes I've seen of a late-round defensive line prospect. And it was stuff that I was getting to my phone. People were texting me, sending me videos like, did you see this? Did you see that? Articles coming out. And so at this point, what do you think is going through my mind at this point? Some people. What's going through my mind? Right, I'm about to go to the NFL. I'm like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm like, I'm going to drive this car. I'm already a sneakerhead, so I'm going to have 4 times as many sneakers. Like, I thought I had it set. Then this is me in the NFL. Right, you guys get it? You guys pick up on that? What's the joke here? Right. And so after that time, there was about a month to a month and a half where I was really in a tough place. I mean, day in and day out, I was like, because I'll tell you guys, whenever you think something is your purpose and it's not ending up like that, what happens is you not only start to get mad at yourself, but you also start to get mad at people around you, and then you start to try to wish the worst for people. So instead of me saying, oh, I'm so glad my friend signed here, or I'm so glad my friend signed here, what started happening is I was like, man, I'm better than this guy. Man, I hope this guy gets hurt. Man, I hope this guy comes home too so he can be just like me. And so I once heard a saying that says, power will show your attitude towards people, but adversity will show your attitude towards God. And at that point, at that phase in my life, my attitude towards God wasn't the best, just because my whole life I thought, and especially from high school to college, I thought I was going to be a professional athlete. I thought I was going to play in the NFL, but it was a difficult time for sure. So then right around that time, I get a call from one of my buddies. He's at Wofford, and he's like, hey. And I'm like, what's up? He's like, how's the whole football thing going? I'm like, it's going, because at this point, this is probably 2 months after, I still think that I'm going to have an opportunity to play. And so he's like, I have an opportunity for you. I was like, what's up? He was like, I want you to basically be a mentor for a bunch of high school athletes. And I was like, what do you mean? He was like, well, you get to go and you get to tell your story to all these high school athletes day in and day out. You get to tell them what you've been through, how it applies, and they were like, and you're a believer, so you can tell them how God has impacted your life in the game of football. So this picture right here is the first time I ever got to go to South Gwinnett High School. And so maybe right when I got done, or really when I got home, I got to sit down and I was like, like that was pretty cool. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, I'm still going to end up playing football. And so then I had a conversation with my dad, and he was like, well, maybe God's had all that stuff happen to you in the game of football to share it to the athletes of tomorrow. And so that's what I do now. That's one of my purposes. I feel I get to talk about my trials, my tribulations, my successes to the athletes of tomorrow. So this is another picture where after the Brookwood game, these are some of the guys I get to hang out with day in and day out. We had just beat Brookwood. I know. Yeah, look. They're like, we know where that trophy's from. Yeah, 35-21. Remember that. And so with that being said, it really showed me, it really opened up my eyes that just because I failed at something didn't mean it was, I failed at something, but it wasn't failure because it wasn't my purpose. So what we're going to do is we're going to break it down into 3 things. Does this sound good? I gave you a number so you can have a concrete idea. So the first one, your purpose is one of one. Everybody say that. Your purpose is one of one. So what you have to understand at the end of the day, everybody is made different in this room. No 2 people are alike. We don't even have twins in here. Nia actually she's one of a triplet, but she's not like either of them either. I know all 3 of them. And so what you have to understand is this, that your purpose is one of one, and God has a specific purpose for everybody in this room. And so you have to understand that if you try to live his purpose, you'll think that you're a failure your whole life, when you're really not. You're just not living the purpose that God had for you. If you try to live her purpose, it'll be the same thing. You have to understand that nobody's purpose in life is identical. Have you guys ever heard that question? If you could change one thing about your life, what would it be? Have you guys heard that question? And so everybody says, well, I would do this different, or I would do that different. But what you have to understand is stuff in life doesn't happen to you. Stuff in life happens for you. And so your purpose, your life is dictated on the purpose that God has for you. So instead of always looking back, look forward and understand the purpose that God has in your life. I saw this before, and this quote is by Albert Einstein. It says, everybody is a genius. But if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that's stupid. And so some people would look at that quote and be like, well, how does that apply to my purpose? And so I'm here to tell you guys this, that people will tell you, hey, you were meant to do that. People will tell you, hey, you're meant to do that. And at the end of the day, you have to understand, your purpose is from God. It's one of one. So nobody in this room will have the same purpose as anybody else. Me and Gideon both played college football, but we went to 2 different schools. So therefore, our purpose was to impact different people. There's a 90% chance I'll never see any of his teammates ever in my lifetime. There's a 90% chance he'll never see any of my teammates in my lifetime. So you have to understand that God puts you in situations day in and day out to show your purpose and show your testimony through the world. So I got another example. This is my cousin Julian. And so, look, Victoria and Nicholas, yeah. So he's a senior at Parkview High School. And so growing up, Julian's a superstar athlete. I mean, he's probably the most athletic kid in our family. It's without a shadow of a doubt. And on top of that, I mean, he's a whiz kid too. He got a 32 on the ACT and like a 1,500 on the SAT. So we hear superstar athlete, we hear really, really smart. So at the end of the day, everybody's like, he started playing football late too. I believe he started as a sophomore or a freshman. He started as a sophomore. And so superstar athlete, really smart, grew up playing baseball. So what position do you think we're thinking he's going to play in? No, if he's playing football, what position do you think or on offense? Quarterback, right. And so there was this time when everybody was like, oh yeah, you're going to be the quarterback, you're going to be the starter, this is going to happen, that's going to happen. So then 9th grade happened, and he played a little bit. But then 10th grade happened, and the senior had left, and instead of putting him as the starter, they put a 9th grader in front of him. So I believe it was the starter, and then it was a 9th grader, then it was him. So at that point, he was in this point where he was hearing this from us, but other things were happening. And at that point, I had talked to him because I love to talk to all my cousins about football. And I said, hey, have you ever thought about being a long snapper? And if you guys don't know what a long snapper is, you know when the punter's back here in football and he's got to punt the ball? Well, the long snapper is the guy who gets it back there. And so he was like, yeah, I guess I could learn how to do that. Well, long story short, he's a whiz kid. He catches on to things fast. So he became the starter as a long snapper his sophomore year of high school. He became the starter as a junior his junior year of high school. And now he's the starting long snapper for Parkview, and he's getting recruited by colleges all over the country. So it just shows you an example of, even though you're hearing one thing, even though you think you're failing at something, at the end of the day, it's not failure if it's not your purpose. Everybody got that? All righty, so the next thing that I have is your purpose is to honor God. Now, raise your hand if you like to exercise in here. Raise your hand if you like to run, if you like to lift weights, all that stuff, right? Yeah. So, everybody. So, as everybody know, a lot of you guys know, I like to work out. Like, I enjoy working out. I do it early in the morning. I do it 5 times a week. And so, the thing about working out is this, like, I believe that day in and day out, I don't work out just to work out, just to have a good time. I work out because I know that if I want to honor God to my best ability for His glory, I know that I've got to be able to move around. I've got to be able to get places. I can't be like, oh, I don't feel good. I'm tired. I got to lay in bed today. You can't do that when you're trying to do everything to your best ability for God's glory. And so Romans 12:1-2 says, I appeal to you, therefore, brothers, by the mercy of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. And then verse 2 states, do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good, acceptable, and perfect. And so what you have to understand is this. When it comes to your purpose and it comes to honoring God, you cannot let outside sources impact that. And what do I mean? If God has told you, hey, I want you to do this, but people around you are telling you, hey, you don't need to do that, or that's not important, a lot of times we go, okay, well, I worry about those opinions more than I worry about God's opinions, so you start to lean towards that. But if you're a true believer and you honestly feel in your heart that you need to do everything to your best ability for God's glory, you need to get those people's opinions out of your mind. Because at the end of the day, God's way is always the right way, regardless of anything else. Okay? And so another scripture that I love to read is 1 Peter 4:10. It says, as each has received a gift, use it to serve one another as good stewards of God's varied grace. So what you have to understand is this, that if everybody in this room has a purpose, it is your job to do it to your best ability for God's glory. So you have to understand, everybody's purpose in here is different, okay? There's no debate, no ifs, ands, or buts about that. But what you have to understand is God has given you the ability, God has given you the opportunity to use the purpose that He's given you. So you need to make sure that you're a good steward of what He's given you and do everything the best you possibly can. And so I've said it a couple of times by now, but this is an acrostic that I used to have on the tape that I would wear in football. I'd have it on my socks sometimes. I'd have it on the waistband. And so it looks crazy right now, but what it means is this. And so to do everything to my best ability for His glory. And so you have to understand that first part, that second part only comes if you're doing something to the first part. You can't do something average and be doing it to the glory of God. You have to be doing something day in and day out the best you possibly can. I'll give you an example. If you guys are in school, it's one thing if you struggle in a class. I used to struggle in classes all the time. But if you get to the point where you're okay with making a bad grade, you're okay with failing a test, then you're not doing the second part because you're not doing the first part. Okay? And so you can also not do the first part. You can do the first part, not do the second part. If you're doing everything to your best ability because you want your friends to like it, if you're doing everything to your best ability because you want to end up in the newspaper, if you're doing everything to your best ability because you want to make a lot of money, then you're not honoring the second part. And so over time, what will happen with you is you'll think that you have this purpose in life, but what will happen is at the end of the road, you'll be like, this is it? I thought there was a lot more. I thought that there was a lot more at the end of this road, but I just feel empty. And so what you have to understand is both of these go hand in hand. And so your purpose, the last one I'll leave you is this. Your purpose is from God, okay? You have to understand this, that yes, your purpose, you can honor God in everything you do. You can have a specific purpose, but at the end of the day, if you don't understand it's from God, it's going to change the mindset that you have towards something. Like, I want you to think about it. When you want something at home and your parents are like, yeah, if you clean your room, I'll give you this, I'll give you that. Doesn't it change the way you clean your room? Doesn't it change the way that you do the chores? Because at the end of the day, you're doing it for something else. And so when you understand your purpose and you're doing it for God, it should change your mindset day in and day out. And so I read this book once called Purpose Driven Life. And so what I want everybody to do right now is I want everybody to take out their phone. Yes, you guys usually don't hear that in church, but yes, it's okay. Everybody take out their phone. All right, now I want everybody, raise your hand if you have an iPhone. I want everybody to go to their camera app and hover over that. And you should see a link pop up. Yeah, click on the link. Yeah, if you can zoom into and it'll pop up. Right. Can I see my phone? And so there's a poem up there. And so it's a poem I carry day in and day out. I have it in my wallet. I read it maybe once or twice a week. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to read it, and then we're going to close in prayer, and then JC's going to come back up. But at the end of the day, I want you guys to remember this, that your purpose is one of one, that your purpose comes from God, and your purpose is to honor God. So at the end of the day, you have to make sure you do everything to your best ability for God's glory. So here the poem goes like this. You are who you are for a reason. You're a part of an intricate plan. You're a precious and perfect, unique design called God's special woman or man. You look like you look for a reason. Our God made no mistake. He knit you together within the womb. You're just what he wanted to make. The parents you had were the ones he chose, and no matter how you may feel, they were custom designed with God's plan in mind, and they bear the master's seal. Know that trauma you faced was not easy, and God wept that it hurt you so. But it was allowed to shape your heart so that into your likeness you'd grow. You are who you are for a reason. You've been formed by the master's rod. You are who you are for a reason, because there is a God. Hey guys, real talk. Thanks for listening. I would love if you could share this podcast with your friends and family, just to spread the message out that faith in anything in your life is a great foundation. Also, I'd love if you could follow me on social media at FRHart2. That way, not only can you get more bits and pieces of the video podcast, but you can also see day-to-day life, what goes on in my life. Thanks again for listening. Have a great day, and God bless.